How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Pick Swap podcast. Following All-Star Weekend, I know we're taking a little bit of a break from basketball, but me and Sean are not taking a break from podcasting. Sean, how you feeling after the weekend, brother?
Yeah, Steph Curry stole Joel Embiid's MVP last night, and you can't convince me otherwise. So it was overall a pretty fun weekend of basketball. A lot of cool stuff going on. Nice to have a little break for the All-Star break, give the Sixers a little rest, and all NBA teams need it at this point. So always cool to see all these guys kind of come together, and can't complain. Pretty cool weekend overall.
Yeah, I love the All-Star Weekend. A couple things that were disappointing. I mean, the dunk contest was
Sucked.
disappointing.
Yeah.
Um, Maxey didn't play all that well in the Rising Stars game, but it was just cool to see him out and get a lot of national recognition. I think that's the thing I like a lot about the
Yeah.
weekend is, Embiid gets recognized, Maxey obviously as well. And like you said, Embiid had 36 and 10 last night.
Yeah.
He was on his way to getting that All-Star game MVP, but Steph just had to go nuclear in the third quarter, which I mean, to be expected, I guess it's Steph Curry. So, but
Mhm.
before we get going too far into this, we want to talk about our sponsorship with BetUS. We are excited to announce. I mean, we've already announced it, but to continue our sponsorship with BetUS, which is the leading online sportsbook and casino. They've been in the industry for just about 25 years and currently expanding, which we're super excited to be a part of. Make sure to log on to BetUS and feel more involved with the game. Use our promo code PickSwap as a first-time depositor to cash in on some great opportunities. I'll tell you guys something. I lost money on the All-Star game last night. It seems to be the only thing I do is just lose money on these betting apps, but it's still fun. And it's something to keep you involved. I mean, the All-Star game, like we said, some people don't like it that much, but having a little bit of stake in the game makes it a little bit more fun. I don't know about you, Sean. You put money on that? Maybe I'm just a degenerate.
I was rocking Embiid and DeRozan for MVP, and Embiid gave me some real hope towards the end
Yeah,
there. Crazy. I was watching the over under throughout I think it ended
by
right.
one.
The line was at 363, I think, or what at 320. I forget exactly what it was off the top of my head.
Yeah,
But ridiculous is that high and still right there going for it. So
yeah.
very crazy.
I had a
Mhm.
combo bet of Team LeBron and the over on 325,
Wow.
and they ended at 324. So
Yikes.
that one hurt a little bit, but that's the way it goes with
Hmm.
betting. You win some, you lose more than you win most of the time. But at least in my case, maybe other people have a little bit more luck than I do. But regardless, you want to talk about that game a little bit.
Yeah.
Genuinely, Embiid stood out. Like he actually stood out, and I think that's something you can take away from that game. The points and rebounds and everything. No one's playing defense for most of the game, but he really looked like one of the better players on the floor in that game. So is that what you took away from it?
Yeah, it's just so cool to me. And I know I feel like I say this often, but it's so cool to me to just watch him become the big dog amongst the big dogs. And you see him he had the one fadeaway didn't fall late, but that would have pulled him I believe within one in crunch
Yeah.
time of the game as they were going. And it's he was the guy I looked to take
Yeah.
the ball, go get a bucket, led Team Durant in scoring. He had 36. The next highest was Devin Booker with 20. He was the second highest scorer in the game behind just Steph Curry, which is these are all
With
just absurd
50.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, who had 50 and just put on a show. But it's just so cool to me to just watch this guy and even just the way he carries himself amongst the other all stars. Before the game, he's out there gambling, throwing cards, spitting
That was
cards around.
awesome.
So cool, so cool. Also, I'm all about it. I love both Maxey and Embiid are guys that I think the city of Philadelphia has particular pride in. So it's cool to me to see them get to show that on a national level and just show how cool they both are as people as well as basketball players.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a part of the reason why I really like it. I even since when I was really young, one of the first things I really got into as a basketball fan was the All-Star game, All-Star weekend, and just getting to see these guys on a little bit more of a personal level, like you said, rather than just playing the game and being, part of the game. So, I think, you see Maxey sit down with Embiid courtside during the
Yeah,
Rising Stars Challenge. You see them talk and everything. And Maxey was there. You could see him at the dunk contest and the 3-point contest and everything. And, just really cool to see those guys. I mean, you see Embiid with his kid walking around, and that was
so
just
cool, so cool.
heartwarming and as wholesome as you can be with a guy like Joel. And he talked about it right after the All-Star game, and the way his journey, how strange and convoluted it's been for him to get to this point, but how amazing it's been to get to this point. 5 years ago, he's 5-time All-Star now. We waited 2 years, and he was talking about how he wanted to quit at one point, and I think that that's like the reason for the significant pride and love that
For sure.
is reciprocated between the fans and Joel. Is like, we waited for this long. We had to fight off. I remember having a real conversation with my dad, like at the dinner table when I was, I don't know, 16. And I'm telling him, like, listen, like, he's gonna be back, he's gonna be good, and all this stuff. And my dad's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Can't stay healthy, can't stay on the floor. And I'm like, listen, like, when he's here, he's gonna be great. And I'm just I having that and seeing the 75th anniversary team and everything, like, just a very, very cool basketball weekend for guys like us to consume that type of content. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, I did as well. And like you said, like I refuse to just kind of let that be like brushed over. Like I'm
Oh
sure
no.
the like cities when you think about guys like Giannis or Jokic or the same kind of like homegrown, I'm sure the fan bases feel a similar type of pride toward those guys. But just like looking at Embiid's evolution as both a human being and a player, just the way
Yeah.
that he's become like the guy of the city. And like there were legitimate questions. Will this guy ever step on the court? Will he ever play? Will he ever get in shape? Will he ever stick to his nutrition plan? He had like the family issues, some tragedy there, a bunch of real stuff that was like questionable as far as how it would impact his career. And like there's the one quote going around. I read it in the Yaron Weitzman book where I believe it was Brett Brown said, like we're all gonna get our asses fired just because Joel can't get in shape and like that kind of thing. And it was like just to see like the turnaround, and now everybody's like enjoying kind of the fruits of his labor because he has put in the work. He has changed
Yeah.
his nutrition. He has taken it so much more serious, and him growing up in maturity and just the way he handles himself and like. I mean, it's being put on full display. He's out there with the best of the bets and looking like every bit of he belongs. And I mean, he dropped a little poster on Jared Allen, which has become the normal for him now, which I loved
Yeah.
as well last night. So just very cool to see him. I think he's reaching the point where I would consider him a snub for the all 75 team last night.
Yeah, I mean, I think if this happened maybe 2 or 3 years ago, the way that he's playing, if this was you push the timeline back a little bit, I think he's up there
If
with
Anthony
those
Davis,
guys.
if Anthony Davis is on the list, Joel Embiid should be on the list.
Yeah, but like I think we can all admit that that was wrong.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I
Anthony Davis does not belong on that. Neither does Damian Lillard, and I like Dame, but he doesn't belong on that
That
list.
was my next point. I was about to bring that up too, Dame Lillard. Like at the end of the day, and I like Dame. I do like Dame, but at
Yeah,
the end of the day, like what have you really done? Like you haven't gone on a serious run in the playoffs. You haven't won MVP. You haven't been like you've led a decent Portland team to like a fairly good season, hit a couple dope buzzer beaters, and like at the end of the day, like there's you I don't think you cracked the list with these other guys, is I guess the bottom line.
no, absolutely not. And when you look at the guys that got snubbed, when you look at like what's Klay Thompson is, a better all-time player than Dame, better than AD, Dwight Howard certainly, Tracy McGrady certainly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of guys, and I mean that list it is what it is. It's whatever. But like see again, like seeing that in the halftime and everything, and seeing Michael Jordan be out there and emotional with those guys. Like I think, I was saying this to my roommate earlier. I think a lot of I don't know how to explain it exactly, but I think it seems like a lot of those guys kind of it seemed to weigh on them a little bit more. Following the recent tragic death of Kobe and
Kobe, for
everything.
sure.
I think a lot of those guys were kind of like this is probably gonna be the last time we're all in the same room together. And a lot of those guys when they do the 100th anniversary or 100th year anniversary, a lot of those guys won't be around, which
Yeah.
is a shame to say, but it's the truth. A lot of those guys are not gonna make it another 25 years. So it was really cool to see them all together, and guys like Charles Barkley represented the Sixers. You saw the picture of Embiid and Dr. J and
So
AI.
cool.
I sent that to my dad this morning. Just so awesome. And, seeing James Harden get announced as a 10-time All-Star and Philadelphia 76er, like a lot of really cool stuff, not just for the NBA fans, but specifically for Sixers fans this weekend, because AI always shows love, and it's awesome to see him get his flowers this time around again, because he was hated for a long time too.
Yeah, and one of the most influential basketball players of all time in terms of you see the way he talks with like the current NBA player. Like I saw Tatum tweeted out about
Yeah.
he said every time AI sees me, he shows love for my game, and that means so much coming from him. And it's just cool how AI like goes out of his way to interact with all these guys. And it's cool. It feels like he's kind of stepped back in the limelight a little bit. Like we see him courtside
Yeah.
of the Sixers. We see him. He's just been around more, which is cool. And
Yeah.
he iced out last night, looking good. Love
Yeah.
it. The picture of him and Dr. J sitting courtside with Embiid like in frame playing was just that's like one of the artful pictures to me is like that's three eras of Sixers basketball
Yeah.
right in one picture. And It's awesome. Very, very like cool moment as far as just sentimental reasons last night and this weekend.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us look at AI, and I wish I was around for more of his prime. Like I remember watching him, but like, very barely remember that.
Yeah.
I didn't become a real fan until like probably closer to 2010, when he had been long gone at that point, especially out of his prime. And then you think about Dr. J, and the last time the Sixers won a championship was Dr. J and Moses Malone. And I wrote an article this morning, and I mentioned that like the Harden and Embiid duo is probably the best Sixers duo since Dr. J and
Yeah.
Moses Malone, which is insane to say, that it's been probably 30 years since they've had a duo of that caliber, 50, 40 years, but that's the situation we're in right now. And those guys have a chance to really make some waves coming up this season. So, but like to go back a little bit, like I'm happy Embiid is the one that we get to watch. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
in when we're talking about that 100th anniversary, like Embiid's going to be sitting down right there too, and whoever, maybe it's Maxey that's with him as well. Like who knows? But getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here. Let's talk about going forward with this team though. They have a break until Friday, and Daryl Morey kind of confirmed that Harden will be playing on Friday. So how are you feeling after this break? We're going to talk about the starting lineups and everything, but just your general overall feeling. They got about 25 games left. They're sitting 2.5 games back. They're sitting in third place. They have a chance to make a little run here. How are you feeling following the All-Star break?
I feel pretty great, to be honest. It's a very exciting time to be sitting there. Like I was sitting in the room with a couple of my friends yesterday, and I was like, 5 more sleeps until Harden plays for the Sixers, and it's like it feels like there's like a Christmas aspect to him coming, and I just can't wait to see like him on the same court as Embiid. My imagination is already like running wild with what this is going to look like and how the play is going to look and how the playbook changes, how everything changes with James Harden. And it all comes down to I'm just so excited to see how much he changes things, because I really do believe like the level of passer that he is, the way that like the Sixers have been as good as they have this season without anybody really running this offense. It's been Joel. Wait until they double. They said on the broadcast last night, Embiid has the 4th highest usage rate in the past 25 years, which is absolutely crazy. Just how much, and I mean like that's not a like that makes sense when watching the Sixers play for sure. Like they've clearly played through him. So I guess just seeing some weight taken off him, allowing Harden to take the keys a lot more, set other guys up. I think the complementary players stats are all gonna see an increase with the way Harden's gonna find them in spots, and I'm just can't wait to see it happen.
Yeah, I'm fully in agreement with you there. I can't wait. Like I think that's the feeling with a lot of fans right now is I just can't wait to see, what it's gonna look like. There's so many things that you can point to that's exciting. I mean, I was kind of going through all the matchups, because the Sixers right now are the third favorite. Bless you. The Sixers are the third favorite team to make it out of the East. Odds wise, Vegas knows, I guess, whatever. And I'm just looking at the matchups, and obviously Milwaukee's up there, Brooklyn's up there, which I don't know. I don't know how much we want to talk about that, but they are in the 8th seed in the East right now. And I was thinking about it earlier. I mean, Ben hasn't played a single game this season. Kyrie's played in 14. Kevin Durant has missed like a month and a half, and still, as of last week, had no timetable for return. I don't know. A lot of people are confident. Yeah, I guess so. A lot of people are confident in that team. I'm not so confident in that team. They're going to be good, but I don't know if they're the favorite to get out of the East, which right now they are. And then the Sixers are third, Miami is fourth, and Boston is fifth. So that's leaving out Chicago and Cleveland, who are up there in the top 4 or 5 seeds in the East right now. But like the Sixers match up well with all those teams. I'm not sure how you're feeling, but like they've been able to like scratch tooth and nail, battle with these teams, whether it's they don't have a worse record against any of these teams other than a tie for the season, and that's without anyone next to Embiid, not just not Harden, not just not another superstar, literally actually nobody in that point guard wing spot that James Harden will be playing. So I think when you look at the matchups and you look at the way that the Sixers have been able to fight and claw and be next to these teams and be in the conversation right now without a co-star, And then not just adding a co-star, but adding James Harden. I'm incredibly excited about what's next for them and how they'll look in 15 games when Harden's fully, implemented to the lineup.
Yeah, it's a deep Eastern Conference this year. I mean, when you think about like looking at these, like the Heat, Bulls, Sixers, Cavs, Bucks, Celtics, Raptors, Nets, those are like 8 legitimate like playoff teams that will
Yeah.
make it. Like Celtics have been red hot or a little scary right now. The Bucks are the team that I fear the most. I definitely am more scared about a matchup with them than Brooklyn right now. I mean, I think the Brooklyn series is destined to happen, and I'm looking forward to it just as a basketball fan, and
Yeah.
just to be so fun. And I think both Embiid and Harden would be so locked in mentally on not losing that series, that it would be a blast.
Yeah.
The Bucks, I mean, as much as I do hate on Ben Simmons, and obviously I'm still a little bitter from how just everything went down. Like him guarding Giannis was a real asset when we talk about how we match up. And I mean, as great as Georges Niang was in that final game before the All-Star break, matching up with Giannis as best he could, I
Yeah.
just can't believe that's would be a strategy built to last over a 7-game series. I can't imagine that happens. So I'm a little nervous about how we match up there. But I mean, the bottom line is Joel Embiid. As far as like, you can look down the roster of every single team in the conference, and there's not a guy that I think can one-on-one guard him. The Bulls specifically is a matchup that he'll just feast. He's going to eat on Vucevic as he has all season, and like I think that matchup alone lifts the Sixers as favorites over them if there was a Bull series. The Heat, Bam will match up relatively good. That's probably like the best matchup. And the Cavs scare me a little just with their length and athleticism as well. It's going to be a tough path, but I mean, Embiid and Harden, I think once that they start clicking, that they find their I guess path and their how comfortable they get with each other, I think the league is going to be put on notice by that.
Yeah. I mean, again, I know a lot of people are speculating how this is going to work. There's only one ball to go around, as they say, as if James Harden hasn't played with another star in his career. I think that's asinine to even, really consider as an issue for a guy that averages the most assists per game in the entire league. Again, a lot of people are overthinking this, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of people are overthinking how it's going to work and, Embiid needs the ball in his hands. Yeah, that's how a lot of guys, work. That's how a lot of guys operate. It's the NBA. Scorers need to score, and they can't do that without the ball in their hands. But the thing is, Joel Embiid is going to benefit so much from a guy that knows how to get him the ball in spots where he can score more easily. Like, think about how often there was a stretch earlier this year where we were talking about how very rarely Embiid gets easy buckets and how rarely he gets to the backboard and inside the paint and really gets an easy layup or a dunk. Like, it doesn't happen all that often because teams are so locked in from the second he crosses half court, they got a guy checking him. That doesn't happen anymore or happens less. And even if it does happen, you have a guy that's able to operate and take over and do the things that you have been wanting everyone else to be able to do. So I don't know. Like you said, looking down the roster, I mean, Brook Lopez has had back surgery earlier this year, still has no timetable to return. I was doing some research on that yesterday. It's actually kind of interesting that there really has not been an update on his return. So, Bobby Portis and Serge Ibaka for the Bucks will be the guys that are checking Embiid. Thank you very much. We saw what he was able to do against that last week. You're looking at, Chicago. Vucevic gets eaten up by Embiid on a regular basis. When you're looking at Brooklyn, they said they needed Andre Drummond to guard Embiid. They needed him in return so he could guard Embiid. I don't know if everyone's forgetting what Embiid used to do to Andre Drummond. And then if you fast forward, Embiid is like 3 times the player that he was in 2018.
Yeah.
And on top of that, Andre Drummond has been a backup for the last 3 seasons. So I don't know where people are making that up. They're pulling that right out of their ass, saying Andre Drummond is the answer to guarding Embiid. He wasn't the answer in 2018 when he was an all-star.
Yeah.
He's playing 15 minutes a game now. He's not even starting on most teams. So anyway, when you're going down the list of guys, you're going down the list of teams. The Cavs have the most length, but we literally just saw what he was able to do: 40-point triple-double in 30 minutes. Like, Embiid is going to cause problems for literally everybody.
Yeah.
There is no one in the league,
Awesome.
league wide. There's no one in the league that can check Embiid, and that gives you the Sixers an advantage in every playoff series. So that's where you really hang your hat on if you're the Sixers. Defensively, he's able to anchor you, as a lot of people are concerned about the defense. It is a concern. I won't lie. I think that's the biggest concern from here on out is how they'll play defensively. Daryl Morey said that he thinks they're going to be better than people think, but like we can talk about the starting lineups a little bit. But how are you feeling just defensively, and what's the best way to line this team up to give them the best defensive chance and the chance to win in the series?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like we've missed the Sixers have missed Ben Simmons this year in that aspect. Just the
Yeah,
length, the athleticism, the matchup, the switchability. Those are all things that have been kind of a foundational piece of like the Sixers defense for years now, and for it just not to be there, it kind of hurts. Obviously, holding on to Matisse was very impactful in when we think about like matchup wise. That's a real asset for the Sixers team. I still need to see some more out of Matisse growth wise offensively for me to be confident in him playing playoff minutes, because
yeah,
there is going to be a great amount of sagging off Matisse and saying we will let him beat us if he can, and I don't believe he
yeah,
can. And frankly, I'm not certain that he can either right now. So I would like to see more. I mean, he's getting there. The cutting is a real aspect of his game that's improved. It's weird because we're talking about like everybody knows Matisse can defend at the All NBA level, one of the best in the league at it. The improvement on offense has to be there for him to be able to play these minutes. So just
yeah,
like the more he can develop offensively, just opens up his entire game, and it really just increases his overall potential, because there are going to be times where I think we're just going to have to take him off the floor just because we can't have him out there on offense. And if that changes, that's huge for the Sixers. Outside of that, I mean, it's difficult. Harden's going to help with the rebounding issue as well.
yeah,
The rebounding is also a huge concern on this team. He's a guy that's been a triple double guy. I think he's averaging a little over 6 rebounds per game this year, which that'll help. That's more than we're getting out of like Seth Curry, and that's more than like
yeah,
help in that aspect. So, uh, as far as defensively, there's going to be a lot of playing around. I think they're going to be not as switch heavy, not as I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. A lot of it depends on Harden too, because he's better defending bigger guys. Like he's a better post defender than he is perimeter defender, which is also fine. We can figure out how to work that as well. Another quick thing I want to dive into is just the pick and roll aspect of Harden and Embiid, and this is something I've kind of been hesitant on because Embiid just frankly hasn't been that great as a roller throughout his career, and it's more of just like he just hasn't done it outside of him like being bad. Like we've absolutely seen moments where he's rolled, got the ball going home to the rack, and it's worked. And I guess my point is there's zero reason why he can't be excellent at that. For the guy who's such a high IQ basketball player, has the frame, the body, the skill set, and obviously has the finishing ability, can finish around the rim as well. I think that there's going to need to be some real work put in between those two and the chemistry aspect, building it and making that great. And especially considering the fact that either of these guys can pop, like Embiid can pop right out, hit a three. That's no problem either. And I
yeah,
also think in fairness to Embiid, like a lot of the pick and roll sets, that wasn't really what Ben Simmons was good at. Like he
no,
was not a guy that was excellent at running the pick and roll. And I think a lot of that comes down to size as well. Like when you're working with such narrow windows and fitting things in, finding a way to roll, like Simmons is a guy, he's 6'10", Embiid's 7 foot. That's a lot, but like combined like 500 pounds between the two of them, plus the two
yeah.
defenders in there. That's just a whole lot of body in like one pick and roll motion. So I think like that was a reason why they kind of kept it more spread, something like that. But I think with Harden, that this absolutely has to be something worked into the playbook and built on chemistry wise.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. But like you said to begin with, like Embiid is so smart and
Yeah.
so calculated. As a big man, I don't see a reason why he wouldn't be able to figure it out. As a rolling big, and he's a screener now. He's been great in the two-man game. Whether it was with JJ or whether it was with Seth in the last couple of years, like he's been able to change and do things and evolve as a player very quickly depending on the personnel around him. And now you have a guy that's a pick and roll maestro, a guy that makes his money off of dissecting defenses in a pick and roll. And I don't see why Embiid is. I mean, like you said, he's huge. He's 7'2", 280. He's a huge body that will set great screens. And rolling, whether it's the short roll where he can dominate in the mid range, which he does, and he's a great finisher around the rim. Like he's not the vertical threat of Clint Capella or Dwight Howard in his prime, obviously. But there's other ways to get him the ball and positions to score. And having your two best players in an action
Yeah.
with one of the best passers in the game, the results are endless in the way that can be effective when you're looking at a guy like Danny Green, who will absolutely benefit from that. And, we'll talk about him being potentially in the starting lineup, or Georges Niang, guys that will just absolutely benefit from the action and the attention that's forced upon Harden and Embiid pick and roll, whether it's the opposite corner, whether it's the short corner, whether it's the wing. Furkan, all these guys are going to benefit from that. And when you think about Matisse Thybulle as a cutter, I think that's going to help as well. When you're talking about his offensive game, they're going to have to be creative with him if he's starting or when he is, in the lineup, because he's inevitably going to be in the rotation. We can't, he's going to be. He's the best defender on the floor at all times. He's going to be probably the saving grace of this defense, depending on how he can be effective offensively. So being creative and finding a way, for him to not just be a standstill shooter, the way that Harden has really, you look down the line of guys that Harden has empowered. You think about who's it, Bruce Brown on the Nets. Like, there's highlight reels of him being a screener for James Harden, because you have to pay attention to that guy, and he can roll, and Matisse has great hands. He's a great vertical athlete when you compare it like that. I think Harden's ability to, elevate his teammates and the guys around him, and his creativity as a passer and a facilitator, and, how smart he is. We're talking about the IQ so much.
Yeah.
Guys like Matisse will find ways, if Doc allows it, really, for, let Matisse be the screener and let Embiid have an entire side of the floor to himself. There's ways I think that they can really work through this and make it worthwhile for everyone. So, I think you could really walk out any one of the five guys.
Yeah.
If Embiid and Harden and Maxey are on the floor and Tobias, like, there's probably 4 or 5 guys you can throw in that spot and be happy with.
Yeah, James Harden's so interesting to me from the aspect of, like, he obviously carries the rep of, like, the strip club guy, the party guy, the guy that comes in out out of shape and that kind of thing. If you just watch him, like, on a basketball court, like, I think he's one of the highest IQ players I've seen in my entire life, and it's so fascinating to me the way, like, he does it differently in the way that he just dissects a defense. Like, you just watch him just, like, dribbling the ball, just analyzing, looking, and he finds, like, where there's the holes in the defense, and he's just so, like, surgical and clinical in the way he will fit passes in, like, the smallest windows that aren't even there. And I don't think that's being given enough credit for how impactful that is going to be on the Sixers. And talking about guys like Danny Green, Georges Niang, Matisse, just their job is going to get so much easier in where the catch and shoot, and just so I don't think there's been enough credit given to that. I think Harden's, like, Ben was a very good passer. Harden's world's better than him. Harden's can run an offense in a way I think that is going to be super exciting, the way this is going to pull in. So a huge compliment to Daryl Morey once again for just making this all happen. And real quick on your Matisse point, we talked about this last year. There was a kind of a deep dive video analysis where they talked about if Matisse could adopt that, like, Bruce Brown role. And we kind of shot that down just because of the aspect of Ben Simmons last year, how Ben kind of already operates in the dunker spot when he's not touching the ball on offense, how it kind of would just create, like, a crowded, in a way that wouldn't be effective. And spacing has been the name of the game for this team for several years now. So they just kind of went against that. Now that Ben Simmons is off the roster, like, I think this comes back into play, where I have no issue with Matisse being the guy running around, checking inside, scraping up the athletic putbacks and that kind of thing. Because that's what Bruce Brown does, is a guy who, I believe he's like 6'4", and he just scraps, kind of plays like a power forward and does it, and he's effective for the Nets. So it will be interesting to see how Ben Simmons and him operate in Brooklyn. I don't think it can work together, so I think he's going to be a guy on the way out. He was a guy that I was interested in as a toss-in simply for that reason, because I don't think there's a need for him in Brooklyn anymore. But as far as Matisse goes, I think the opportunity for him changes now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we said, I mean, again, with guys, all of these guys, I saw a tweet earlier, which was kind of a low blow. But they, not, I forget who tweeted it. It was someone not all that reputable or not all that notable, but they said, like, Giannis is shooting 1% better from 3 than Furkan Korkmaz this year. And it just felt like a low blow. It was like, just, we're on the All-Star break. Like, give everyone a rest right now. Just leave that out for a little bit. But a guy like Furkan is a catch and shoot guy. But he's been completely uprooted from that role and turned into a hybrid guard that has to, get downhill and play in the pick and roll. And, like, while you like that at times, his bread and butter is catching and shooting the basketball, and he just hasn't had that opportunity as much this year. He's the guy I think will really benefit. We talked about that last pod. Guys that will really benefit from James Harden and the way that this offense is going to be. I think Furkan is a guy, like, when you think about who's going to step in, and when you're talking about Danny Green catching and shooting, and Georges Niang, and Tobias Harris might have an uptick in production behind the line as well. Furkan's another guy in that mix that you can throw him in there in that that number 3 spot. Whether it's you're gonna have Harden, I think for sure at this point. Like we briefly talked about Maxey potentially going to the bench and being that like super sub kind of guy. It feels like Maxey's probably going to stay in the starting lineup. I don't know how you see that. Is that how you see it going?
Yeah, I think they're going to play around with it. I think we're going to see both before the playoffs. So in the end, I think he probably ends up starting, but I think that we will see games where both are played.
Yeah, and I don't mind that. Obviously, when you think
Yeah,
about giving Maxey the keys for 5 minutes.
yeah, love it.
He's proved that he can do it. He's proved that he can, kind of carry that. And I'm sure we'll see that at times, even if he does start. I'm hoping that we'll see that where, you just kind of give him the reins for, 4 to 6 minutes and let him see what happens and let him get up and down the floor. And that's something that I think, again, like we talked about, it'll be played with. I think a lot of things will change. You wanted to talk briefly about Georges Niang and how you see his fit with this team.
Yeah. I'm big time kind of getting on the Niang wagon here, and I wrote an article about him being the most like under the radar move. And shout out Daryl Moore if you're tossing a
Yeah.
retweet on it. But I guess the thing that's just jumping out to me most about it is like just fit wise and mentality wise, just how great he is. Like this year specifically, he's averaging 7.6 3-point attempts per 36 minutes, which is the second on the team just behind Isaiah Joe, who's 0.2 higher in that category. And this isn't like an unsustainable thing for Niang. Like I'm looking at his stats specifically. He shot more than that his last 2 years in Utah. He shot 9.1 last year and 8.8 the season before. And I think the shrinking of this in some ways is because he's playing more minutes this year. But just that rate and like willingness to let it fly, like that matters in this offense. And when we're thinking about like the defensive issue, and I'm Niang's not a defensive stopper by any means, but the added just like size there could be different. Like when we're looking at like an aspect of this team, him over Danny Green, I think shooting wise is not that different, which is kind of crazy at this point because Danny Green's been that forever. But Niang's a consistent 40% shooter. He's 39.7% on the year this year, and it's been back and forth. So he might even end up above 40. He probably will at the end of the year. But the bottom line is he can hit at the rate that we need. And if there's some added inches, some added size, that's a new aspect to like this offense that I think should be taken into account. So it's I don't really like labeling him as a power forward because I think he's kind of more versatile in that. He's not a particularly good rebounder, which I wish he was a little better, but you give and take with it. But I think there's a real case that can be made that like Niang's versatility, the way he does, just his ability to shoot it, like he should be in the conversation for starting in this team.
Yeah, so I think about that. What if Maxey goes to the bench, if that's their plan, or if it's something that they just they mess around with. If it's Harden, say like this is just something that's popping in your head with you're talking about defense, 3-point shooting, spacing the floor, with Harden, Green, Harris, Niang, Embiid. There's spacing. The defense is
Yeah.
kind of just like it's more size and like imposing,
Right.
the
Right.
will of defense rather than just like flying around defensively, which is what Thibault does. But there's just a lot of body there, a lot of spacing. You talk about the way that the bully ball that they tried to implement when Al Horford was here. Niang plays a much different offensive style than that, right?
Yeah.
He wants to shoot the threes. That's what he's there for. So adding another bigger guy or a guy that plays bigger, isn't that bad when you think about where Niang operates offensively, because it doesn't take up where Tobias does. It doesn't really
Right.
muck up the paint offense the way that Al Horford did. But I don't know, man. Like you said, there's a lot of different options here. Whether I think Maxey should be in the starting lineup just because of the way he's played, and then it also gives them, the opportunity to throw guys around here. But I don't know. I really don't know what the answer, and I doubt that they know what the answer is yet either. But I
Yeah.
assume they'll trot out Maxey, Harden, Harris, Embiid, and then one of either Green or Thibault to start.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. And I don't want to turn this into a full out Tobias Harris slander, but when you just think about the way these guys who play the same position as far as like on the stat sheet roster, whatever, like they just operate in such different way. Toby averages 3.4 threes per 36 minutes. That's less than half of what Niang's tossing up. And just you just have to let it fly. Like the way
Yeah.
this offense is now going to operate, it's even more important with James Harden that Toby simply takes the looks that are there. You shoot the 3-pointers that you're open to shoot. Like I'm going to be pulling my hair out if he continues to do the pump fake a 3 and dribble into a contested 2. It just cannot happen, especially it's going to become even clearer with Harden because there's going to be better looks available. And when there are better looks available, you have to take them. And I guess that's my appreciation for Niang is because he's just willing to do that. He's willing to, when I have
Chuck.
a sliver for a 3-point shot, I will let it fly. And also, the personality has definitely influenced me a little bit. I'm loving Georges Niang. I was watching the Long Shot podcast with Duncan Robinson, and I believe Davis is the other guy's name on there last night. They had Niang on, and he just like cracks me up. This guy, like Duncan Robinson asked him a question. He's like, from an outside perspective, like it looks like you're becoming like a Philly legend already. What are your like thoughts on that? And Niang's like, he's like, to be honest, you know what I think it is like I just look like a normal guy, and they see me out there banging a couple threes, sprinkling in a couple dunks, talking some shit, and they're like, that could be me out there, and I think that's how it is.
Yeah.
And he's like, so that's what I'm doing, doing my thing, and there's the magic. So I just love like where his head's at, the way he kind of so self-aware with who he is, and he
Yeah.
just tries his ass off out there. Like he really is a grinder in the way that he competes his entire time out there. And there's limitations in his athleticism, his size, everything, but I really do respect the effort and just the way he plays. He's absolutely maximizing on who he is as a player, which is very cool to me.
Yeah, and I think that really is a testament when you talked about, the way that the connection that we had with Embiid earlier and the way that Philly fans kind of attach to certain players. If Niang's playing well, obviously, so that helps. It definitely helps. But the type of player that he is, he's going to talk shit. He's going to get in people's faces. He's going to, he's not afraid of the moment. He's going to run around. He's going to dive on the floor. He's going to push people around. He's the first one in the scuffle and things like that. I mean, there's a reason that the Sixers fans loved Mike Scott. There's a reason for that. And I think for a guy like him, whose role is fairly like minimal, when you're talking about the way that this team looks, obviously we're going to talk about Niang because we spent probably an unreasonable amount of time kind of analyzing this team. But to people outside, you're thinking about everyone. He's probably the 10th guy that you're mentioning on the list. So you're talking about like national media and the way that they talk about him. And I think about his, the way that he was talked about with the Jazz, like nobody cared about him.
Yeah.
We love him here. We really, really do. And I think that's a testament to Philly fans. I think that they recognize the type of guy that he is, the type of player that he is, and the way that he has impacted the game and this team, I think is really important. And something that shouldn't go unnoticed with the way that this team is played. And I listened to his podcast, the Big Niang Theory. It's funny. It's definitely funny, and it's a good to get to know him a little bit. But yeah, like you said, I think he's a Philly favorite, and I think he became a Philly favorite like almost immediately because he does look like he should be working a 9-to-5 construction job, where down the street in South Philly and getting a beer and smoking some cigarettes afterwards. Like that looks like the type of guy he is in the best way possible. That looks like the way that he should be. So his time here, I hope, is extended past this year and next year. I hope that he stays for a while because I think he is like a really good player for this team. The last question I want to throw out there to you, because I saw a tweet about it. I think it was either yesterday or the day before. Someone said it's kind of weird to think about, but this is probably Tobias Harris's last year in Philadelphia. Do you think that that's true? And do you think how do you feel about that if it is the truth?
I think there's definitely a chance of it, especially there's a ton of whispers about the Morey wanting to opening a third max slot, and Tobias is the obvious chopping block name for that. I mean, he's going to be more, he just becomes, the more time that passes, the more and more tradable he becomes. Like the NBA is such an interesting, I guess just the way it works, and the fact that like Toby's had a notoriously bad contract his entire time here. And now we're approaching the point where it's an attractive trade asset because it is the blow it up and get cap space when it expires. So this year, like every year, it gets more and more tradable. And I believe he has 2 years left on the deal after this year. Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
So like 2 years is obviously a lot more stomachable than like 4. I think I wouldn't call it a guarantee that this is Toby's last year here. And I mean, my optimistic glass half empty self would like to hope that like with Harden here, that he becomes like back to his natural spot, that he can be successful. He can be the third guy. He can fall right into that. I guess glass half full look at it, is he's just not the guy that compliments. Like he's never been the Joel Embiid compliment, and like finding that is the most important thing. So I like Toby. I'm not going to hate on him, but I would not be heartbroken if this is the end of the line.
Yeah, I think, I mean, when you're thinking about the best optimal player to put as a, the third piece around these guys, it's a wing that shoots and
Yeah.
plays defense. It's literally just like it's a guy that can go out there and give you, similar scoring production just in a different way. And I think Tobias, for me, the way that I see him, I've gone on there like a little bit of a roller coaster ride from like, get off Tobias's back. He's a good player, great guy, to, it's time to see him go, to, maybe he can really, become this third player that we need. And I think he will be more productive in this role, this changed role that he'll have. I think that this upcoming playoffs might be his last chance to like salvage the value for himself.
Yeah.
When you think about, I mean, if they were to bring him back, I think he has to play like really, really solid basketball. He doesn't have to do anything crazy. He just has to be a really, really solid, consistent player, which he is. He is. But
Mm-hmm.
he needs to find a way to, make that consistency into, something that molds and fits better with the two other players that are, dominating the offense. So, whether it's shooting more threes or tagging the basket more consistently on straight line drives, like there's just little things that he could do, I think, to kind of tweak the way that he's effective. And if he's able to do that, maybe he stays around. But, when you're thinking about how to optimize this team, I think having someone, I'm trying to think of someone that comes to mind, but right now there's no one that's popping into my head.
A guy that I always like bring him up, it is very much like a contrast to Tobias, is Jay Crowder. And that like Tobias absolutely can do more on a basketball court than Jay Crowder, but Jay Crowder does the things that he's best at a higher level than Tobias
Yeah.
does. And they're in completely different like contract frames, role frames, exactly. But like Jay Crowder on the Sixers team would be awesome. Like he just does that's something I always, he's a very like a contrasting comparison, but that's one that always sticks in my mind when I'm looking at this team.
You want to know who just popped into my head?
Who's that?
This is awful. Is Macau Bridges.
Yeah, I mean they're different. Like
Oh no, I know, but I'm just mean like the guy that I think if you were gonna spend a lot of
contract.
money,
Okay, gotcha.
if you're gonna spend a lot of money on an open spot, a guy that would be perfect would be Bridges. And not to not to dig up an old grave, but that feels like the type of player when you talk about the archetype. Good
Yeah.
defender, mid to high level scorer, and just really good at what he does, defense and shooting threes. So I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe if they're able to dump salary with Tobias, maybe that is used to get two like middle of the road guys. And I like Josh Hart a lot, and he was the guy that I really wanted them to see if they could get at the deadline. Obviously that didn't happen, but guys like that where it's like maybe KCP type of guy, good defender, good shooter, Danny Green minus 8 years of age, that type of player. You know what I mean? Like just guys that do their job really well, that complement this team, and that I think that could be the way that they go. But that's a little bit, that's in the future. Right now they're pushing towards this final stretch of games. Like I said, they have like 25 games left. They're in the third seed in the East. So let me get your final prediction. I know I said that was the last question, but a little bit of post All-Star game prediction. Where do you think they end up seeding wise in the East, the Sixers?
I think they end up first. I think people are going to be surprised just how impactful this is. The fact that we're in third place after going through everything that's happened this season is crazy to me. And I think throwing Harden in, it's going to be a fight in the East. And I think genuinely the Sixers are better than both the Bulls and the Heat, which are the two above them in the standings right now. So I think that shakes out, and Sixers are in a good spot right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say two, but I could see them being one. Again, I don't think, to me it doesn't matter that much anymore.
Yeah, me neither.
We did the whole need the one seed last year, and trust me, I was fully on board with that. I've outgrown that. I've seen the way that it works. It doesn't matter that much. So I'm just gonna say two, just because I think they're gonna be careful. They're gonna be they got a lot to figure out in this time, so they might have a couple games where they don't play that well. But regardless, like you said, I think they're going to be really dangerous. They're adding James Harden, for God's sake. There's a lot to come with that.
Yeah.
So before then, we'll get one more time out. I'm gonna be out on a little sabbatical coming up this week. So me and Sean are gonna try to get one more in before I'm out of here. So stay tuned. You can follow Sean on Twitter at Sean_Bernard1. Follow me at JSprain17. Follow the pod at PickSwapPod. Check out our YouTube. Find us anywhere you get your podcast. Make sure to check out BetUS and use our code PickSwapPod. Or is it just code PickSwap? My bad.
Yeah.
And we'll catch you guys very shortly.